Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in Freshman English, and we now turn in our hymnals to page 647. We're going to be working with Alfred Lord Tennyson's The Eagle, another very short poem. Hey, let's remind ourselves that in this collection, number 3, we are focusing on sound devices on page 643. Again, alliteration, the repetition of initial sounds. Consonant, the repetition of final consonants. Assonance, that repetition of similar vowel sounds and stressed syllables. And finally, onomatopoeia. In other words, we're far more interested in our study of these poems. I mean, obviously we're working at level 2A with themes, messages. We're far more interested, though, with the sound devices, right? And we're now going to meet Lord Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson's little text called The Eagle. Let's turn to page 645 and just do some quick biography information. You're going to meet Tennyson again in your senior year for full lectures, no question. And he is one of the most important of the Victorian British poets. Notice your dates, 1809 to 1892. And let's read. The most popular British poet during his lifetime, Lord Tennyson rose from humble beginnings to the position of Poet Laureate of England. Although he was enthralled by the technological advances of the Victorian era, Tennyson remained a poet of nature, bringing both imagination and feeling to descriptions of the landscape and its inhabitants. Now, this is a poem where right away, because of the title, you know that he will be describing the eagle. Let's pay attention to two things as I read this with you. One, let's pay attention to the way that the eagle is personified, given all kinds of human characteristics. And secondly, let's pay attention to the sound devices as we read. I'm on 647. The eagle. He clasps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lowly lands. Ringed with the azure world, he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls. And like a thunderbolt, he falls. Now let's talk for a second together about the ways that Tennyson plays this game. First of all, notice the organization of this poem. Now I'm talking form, not content, yes? Notice that the poem is nicely divided into 2 stanzas, each stanza of 3 lines each. Do you see it? Notice that you've got hands, lands, stands, last words of the first stanza, crawls, walls, falls. Do you see it? So we've got, obviously, some rhyme scheme going on here. We would call it A, B, 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 correct? Notice the repetition of sounds and all of the different sound devices. Clasps, crag, crooked, close, sun, azure, stands, right? Notice the genius of a word like wrinkled. See, the wrinkled sea, right? Finally, let's pay attention now to the way in which this eagle that he personifies has all kinds of interesting human-like traits. For example, a crag is way up high off of the ocean, up in the rocks, and there with crooked hands. In other words, the eagle doesn't have, claws. He's got crooked hands. The next time you ever see a picture of an eagle, you're going to look more closely at the claws because you'll remember this scene, this scene from this poem. The crooked hands, close to the sun in lowly lands. Now, of course, we live in America, where the eagle is our bird of greatest symbol, not only of freedom, but of strength and power. But notice, the eagle is so far up in the crags on the rocks, he is alone. He stands alone. So an American reading of this poem, a patriotic reading of this poem says, yeah, that is what eagles are all about. They are kind of lonely critters, aren't they? All by themselves, and yet here it is, lonely lands, ringed with the azure world. He stands. In other words, you get the picture of an eagle high up in the rocks, looking out over everything. And now Tennyson's going to tell us what it is he sees. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. Notice the distinction of verbs here between crawling, right, what the sea is doing, and here in a moment as the eagle takes flight. He watches from his mountain walls And like a thunderbolt. That's an interesting simile, isn't it? Like a thunderbolt, he falls. So you've got this great idea, this great picture. So you've got a poem that's playing a game of kind of a word picture that you can see in your mind's eye. An eagle standing way up high in the rocks, and he's watching, and then all of a sudden, down he goes to do whatever hunting it is that the eagle is about to do. Of course, we're privileged to live in a place where we get to see eagles every once in a while. And so we've seen these eagles in flight, these huge, huge eagles. So let's now play the game at level 2 and 3. 2A, messages here. Well, what is a message here? The serenity, the solitude of the bird, that represents, of course, freedom, a bird which can represent freedom. The idea that the eagle is aloof, but he's also purposeful, right? In other words, he's ready, he's watching, off he takes, right? The majesty of the eagle is emphasized here. Of course, in 2B, and that's why we're really studying the poem. The genius of this poem is, of course, all the things that are the games that are being played. I mean, we didn't even emphasize it. Look at the second stanza. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls, he watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt, he falls, ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. You see this? Okay, so he's clearly playing this game of intentionality again, right? At level 3A, we can ask this question. What is your favorite text about eagles? What is your favorite text that talks about the power of eagles and the power of these birds of prey? Some of you will as well think about what's your favorite symbol of an eagle? Maybe it's on a game that you're familiar with. Maybe it's a crest or something like that. What is for you your favorite symbol of an eagle? Of course, if you're an NFL fan and you love the Philadelphia Eagles, then that for you, I mean, is the great one, right? Okay. At level 3B, what is your favorite story about, from your own life, about birds? And an eagle, if you have one. A colleague of mine, walking in the Badlands late one evening, heard something and stumbled onto an eagle that had been caught in a trap. Its foot, its claw, was caught in the trap. And this huge bird was working to try and get off the ground. And the job then of my colleague was to go and find help with Forest Service, and they had to somehow try and free this eagle and then heal its really jacked claw. But she pointed out she couldn't believe how powerful those animals were when she got close to it. And of course those claws are razor sharp, would cut right through a Carhartt jacket. The man said that helped her free this eagle. It was a compelling moment for her in her life. Well, there you go, an introduction to Tennyson. I hope maybe it makes you want to even study more of Tennyson's great poetry. He's definitely a genius. Thank you.